Yitavach. I'm now going to record Daf Pehei. We were up to Daf Pehei Amid Aleph, the second line, Uminolon Daha Dekimlu L'Rabbanan Milsi. What we learned in the Mishnah was that if you have an aruga, a section which is 6 by 6 tvachim, you're able to plant 5 different types of zroim. On each side of the square, you can plant a different min, as long as you leave out the last tefa. That means, let's say on the top, you can plant across the top, leaving a tefach on the left side and the tefach of the right side of the top. You can plant along both sides, as long as on the top of each side, you leave a tefach free on top and a tefach free at the bottom. At the bottom, you can plant the entire side as long as you leave a tefach free on either side and one spot in the middle. The reason for this was that between the top row and the middle seed, you have 3 tvachim. And because you have 3 tvachim, since Zroim's Yanika is a tefach and a half, so you have a tefach and a half and a tefach and a half for the row on each side, and a tefach and a half in each direction for the seed in the center. We talked the last time about the problem is that in the corners, your top row stopped the tefach before the end. And let's say your side row also stopped the tefach before the end. So then if you make a diagonal from where the top row ends on the right side and where the row along the side ends at its top, so there's only a square there of an amma by an amma. The diagonal is 1.4. So from one seed to the other, there's only 1.4, but it's not 3 tvachim. So Rashi explained that the ikr is not really the anika. The ikr is the hakera. And since one is running in one direction and the other is perpendicular in the other direction, even though there's only a small difference, a small gap, it's enough to have a hakera. In case things are running in the same direction and it's hard to see the hakera, so then the Chum said it should be 3 tvachim. So the Gemara asks, how do we know that if the Rabbanan say that Zroim need a tefach and a half for Yanika, how do we know that they really knew that rule? The answer is, Dam Reb Chia bar Abba Reb Yochanan. Reb Chia bar Abba said b'shem Reb Yochanan, Mai dechsiv, what does it mean when the Torah writes, Lo yisasig gvul re'acha asher gavlu rishayim? You should not move the border of your friend that the rishayim have demarcated. It simply means you shouldn't steal property from your neighbor by moving the fence. But the kasha is, why is that dafka asher gavlu rishayim? You're not allowed to steal anybody's property, whether it was or was not gavlu rishayim. But the answer is the pasuk has another meaning. Gvul shegavlu rishayim lo yisasig. The rishayim also said that if there's a fence between you and your neighbor, you can't plant seeds or you can't plant trees next to the border, because the seeds under the ground or the trees that have roots under the ground will weaken your neighbor's soil. And the Chachamim Rishayim knew that the roots of seeds can have an effect for a tefach and a half, and the roots of trees can have an effect even more. My Gavlu or Rishayim, who are these Rishayim? Amar of Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yonasan, T'chsiv, it's written, Elu b'nei Seir ha'chayri yoshvei ha'aretz. These are the children of Seir, the chayri, who lived in the land. The Gemara asks, why does the pasuk have to say they're yoshvei ha'aretz? Atu kuli alma yoshvei rekiyanenu. Everybody else lives in the sky. But rather, Ella shayu b'kiyam b'yeshuva shel ha'aretz. They were yoshvei ha'aretz. They knew how to settle the land. Shayu aimrim, these chayri, these people, hayu aimrim, they used to say, malay kanazeh, the size of this stick is the size of land you need, lazayis, to plant an olive tree. Malay kanazeh likvanim. The size of this other stick is the amount of terrain you need for vines. Malay kanazeh l'tainim. The size of this stick is what you need for figs. And the word chayri also, shemarichem as ha'aretz. They were able to smell the soil and tell what to plant in each type of soil. And the chivya, they're also called chivi because in Aramaic, a chivya is a snake. Rav Papa says, they would taste the soil like a snake that eats soil, and they would know what to plant. And the Chachmei Yisrael knew the information that these chayri had. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, chayri shenasu b'nei chayrin b'nei. They're called chayri because the b'nei Esav conquered the chayri. So when they conquered the chayri no longer had any land to cultivate. That's why they're called chayri. They became free of their trouble of cultivating land, well, because they were thrown off it. Amar Rabasi says aruga. When we say that an aruga needs to be 6 by 6 tvachim, that's teicha shisha. That means the interior is 6 by 6 chutz migvuleho. But outside of the 6 by 6, you need another strip of land which is free, so that the farmer can go around and water his plants. I'll explain in a second. Tanya Nam Yochi, we learned in the Bryce also aruga. This aruga that we said that you can plant 5 grains in it is taicha shisha. The interior of the aruga 6 by 6 tvachim. Gvuleh bekama, and the outside border of it needs to be how big? Now there's a mission in Klayim. Rav Yehuda says roichav kimaloi roichav parsa. The width of the area around this 6 by 6 is another tefach, and in that tefach the gardener can walk and water his garden. Amr Bzeira v'Tamer Reb Chanina Bar Papa, my time. What's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda that he says the tefach? The chsiv it's written in Chumash v'Shkisa v'Raglecha Kigan HaYorok. You will water it on foot the way you water a vegetable garden. Should have said v'Shkisa Kigan HaYorok. Why does it have to say on foot? The answer is ma regel tefach. The same way the foot is a tefach wide, af gvul nami tefach. So the border around this aruga needs to be a tefach. So, which means that if you were going to have a 6 by 6, but there would be a tefach within the 6 by 6 that you would use as your path to go around your garden and water it, then you're taking off a tefach on each side. Then you'll only have, instead of 6 by 6, you'll have 4 by 4. That's no good, because if you're going to plant the 4 by 4, the borders of the 4 by 4 and one seed in the middle, the seed in the middle will only have 2 tefachim between it and the row on the border, and that's not enough. You need from the seed until the row on the border should be 3 tefachim, so you have a tefach and a half and a tefach and a half. And again, as I explained, even though the unique is a tefach and a half per zera, but the real purpose is that if we have something that's not running perpendicular to each other, or there's no obvious way that it's planted that shows that it's not mu'urbav, it's not kilayim, it's not mixed, then the Chum measured it by the sheer Yanika. But anyway, but since here, this dot in the middle can be considered going in every direction, it can be considered in line with the top line, or the bottom line, or the side line, therefore it needs 3 tvachim from that seed, from that center, until the borders. And therefore you need another tefach outside in order to have a tefach for the gardener to walk around in order to water his garden. Amar Rav, so Rav says, a chiddush, aruga b'chur b'shaninu. The Mishnah that said that if you have a 6 by 6, you can plant 5 zeraim in it, is speaking this aruga is a solitary aruga that has no other arugas around it. Why? Because if there would be other arugas around it, it's a problem. The Gemara asks the kasha, why is there a problem? But there is mokam kronos. And so, in order to understand this, it's hard to say it without a picture, but if you look in the Rashi, you see in the Rashi has a picture of 9 squares. If you take a look at the top right-hand square, along the left side of that square, you see Rashi shows that you're planting 2.5 of those 6 tvachim you plant going from the top going down. The next square to its left, if you take a look on the right side of that middle square on top, you see that Rashi has a picture where you planted 2.5 tvachim going from the bottom up, which means that the one going down and the right square, which on its left side has a line going from the top going down 2.5 tvachim, and the next square over that has on its right side a line going upwards 2.5 tvachim, there's still a tefach of space between, again it's like this, so there's a tefach of space between one and the other. Besides which, there's 2 tefachim this way, because each one of these squares of 6 by 6 has a tefach of space for the gardener to walk. And therefore the Gemara asks, it should be good enough. Now actually, Taisus has a kasha on Rashi. Why? Because, Taisus says if you do the math, even what you have here is a gap between the top and the bottom of 1 tefach, and you also have a gap between the 2 arugas of 2 tefachim. Even if the gap would be 2 by 2 tefachim, the diagonal, if you do 2 times 1.4, is only 2.8. It's not 3. Especially since the gap between the top row between this row going down and this row going up is only 1 tefach, and here it's 2 tefachim, the diagonal is only 2.24. So you don't have 3 tefachim. But I guess, Rashi probably didn't care, since they're it's enough that they're like this to show that they're different. And Rashi felt that was sufficient. So again, the kasha is on Rav. So what's wrong with having 9 squares like this, as long as each line is not directly mixed with the other line? It has a tefach between it going this way, and has 2 tefachim this way, should be enough. So Amri by Rav, so in Rav's Besmedrash they answered, Mishmei the Rav, in the name of Rav, the problem is b'mala zakronis. The problem is, what happens if instead of doing this, you're actually going to fill the whole side? So now they'll be parallel to each other with only 2 tefachim between them, and that's a problem. So one asks, why should you do it wrong and create a problem? So then, why don't you just plant each one outside of the other? Let's keep them at a gap, of course, and don't fill the whole row so that they're both parallel. The Gemara answers, the Rav was afraid, Gzeira shemiyamala es akronis. There's a gzeira that you might, if you allow a person to plant like this, he might plant all along, and if he plants all along, then it's only going to be 2 tefachim space between them, and that's no good. The Gemara asks, V'lo yehei ela roish tar yerek. There's a halacha called roish tar yerek. What is roish tar yerek? I'll explain. Miloi Tanan, there's a Mishnah, Hoya Roish Toir, Yerek, Nichnas Latach Soda, Achar Mutter, Mipnei Shanira, Soif Soda. If you have a good sized field, and the Forshim say a good sized field is 10.2 amas by 10.2 amas, and you have from one of these fields a line of vegetable that goes interjects or intersects the other field, it doesn't matter. The reason it's called Roish Tor is because the end of a furrow used to go to a point, like a triangle, and an ox's head is also in the shape of a point, comes to a point. But anyway, there's no problem when you have one line of vegetables going from one field into the other and hitting it perpendicularly. Why? Because as long as it is visible, as long as you can see that it's coming from another field, so it's not called that you planted it mixed. It's not planted mixed. This is one field, this is the other field, even though one line goes into it. So the question is, l'chayra, even if you would have both sides, but since this belongs to a square of 6 by 6 here, this belongs to a square of 6 by 6 here, and there's 2 tefachim in the middle, isn't that good enough? And the Gemara answers an absolute and categoric no. Ein roish tar baruga. There's no roish tar baruga. If you have a soda which is 10.2, that's a soda chashuva. Here you have another soda which is also 10.2 by 10.2. It's another soda chashuva. So if something goes from one soda to the other, the line that goes out comes from that soda and is not considered climb with the other. And aruga is not chashuv enough to be able to separate between them unless either it's perpendicular to each other, then it's okay with a little bit of a gap. Another eight says you have 3 tefachim between grain and grain, but 2 tefachim alone, if it's only arugas next to arugas, it's not good enough. A soda is more chashuv, and therefore it is more evident that something coming out from a soda belongs to that soda and not to the soda that it hits. Whereas an aruga is not as chashuv, and if you have 2 parallel lines from 2 arugas, even there's only 2 tefachim between them, it's no good. So therefore, Rav is machmir. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says aruga ben aruga shaninu. Shmuel says no, I disagree with my colleague Rav, and I hold that the aruga of the Mishnah, the 6 by 6, can even be an aruga amongst other arugas, like the box of 9 that you saw in Rashi and Amid Aleph is perfect. V'hokam is arvi ba'dadi, but if you're going to plant the whole row of each aruga, you're going to have 2 parallel shurais with only 2 tefachim between them. And the answer is b'nai teshur lekan v'shur lekan. So Shmuel Taka says you should do it like we suggested, like Rashi has in his picture, that one aruga can have, let's say, 2.5 tefachim going like this. The aruga that neighbors it will have 2.5 tefachim going like this. You'll have a tefach between them this way, and you'll have 2 tefachim between them this way, and that's good enough. Rav was geyser. What will happen if you'll be mamala the kronos? So Shmuel says, I'm not geyser, and just don't be mamala the kronos. Okay, so I'm going to record this. I'm going to upload this. Okay?